Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. This is gonna kind of be a 4th of July special for me because I've been putting off a couple of videos for about a week now. It has just been a crazy couple of weeks for me with my day job opening back up. Thankfully, it's a weekend now, so I have a little bit of time. I can go ahead and get this knocked out and, well, share my thoughts appropriately. And as you can see, I am sharing one of the screen captures of my character. I hope to start being able to record some of my gameplay soon to make it a little bit more interesting. But I digress. This is what I have for now, so I hope you enjoy it. This is my main character in Final Fantasy XIV. And I want to talk a little bit about my thoughts of Heavensward, and with the recent patch 9.1 for Warcraft, my thoughts on that. So it's kind of a combo plate for what I want to talk about today. And I'll go ahead and lead off with my thoughts on Heavensward and the post-content for that. Granted, the screenshot is from Stormblood, one of the zones that you go through. I love this zone, and there is a lot to it, but that is a topic for a different video. For Heavensward, the end review and all the patch content done. Well, I suppose this isn't exclusively about Heavensward itself, though Heavensward will be a lot of it. I got a few topics from it. So, the job system, I cannot express how much better I feel about doing alternate jobs within the Final Fantasy world, simply because how they do it is so much different than Warcraft, and it is, in my opinion, way more alt-friendly because you're not losing progression on your main character. As you can see, or from the sword in this picture, I'm no longer a bard in the exclusive sense. I am a samurai, and all I did was choose my main weapon out. That's all I had to do. Granted, it's a little bit more involved than that. You still have to go through a quest line so you understand the story of the class. But my point is, you don't have to roll a new character if you want to do a different class. You just go to the quest giver, say I want to be a red mage. You'll talk to the person giving you the red mage quest, and bam, you get the stuff to be a red mage. If you want to, or say you start off as a gladiator, or which is basically a Warcraft warrior, but a little bit more involved. And you don't like it, well, you can talk to or you get to a certain level, you can talk to someone in Gridania and change to being a lancer, or you can change to being an archer, or you get to high enough level, and it's like, I'm not really liking how this is going at high level. Well, you got other jobs to unlock, like Gunbreaker. That's one of the ones I unlocked, and I'm planning on leveling up later as my main tank class because I love how it feels. Now, that is one of the biggest differences that I think Warcraft really could learn something from, because that was one of the biggest scraps I had in 15 years of Warcraft. Is my main character in Warcraft was a hunter. I loved being a marksmanship and a beast mastery hunter. But they really weren't different in terms of how they played. It was just a little bit of mechanical differences and a few different abilities, but they were essentially the same. But if I wanted to be, say, a paladin, or I had to roll an entirely new character and go through the entire game again, that just did not feel good to me. And there have been some quality of life improvements, like account-wide mounts, which that is a separate debate if that's a positive thing or not. I'm not getting into that today. But you have to basically go through the whole story again and level up an entirely new character to be able to have that different experience. And if a change is made to your favorite class that is no longer viable, you don't like it, like they give you a huge nerf or something, and you want to change to something different, you still have to go to a totally different character. You can't just change jobs while keeping your progression on your main. That's the biggest thing I'm loving about about Final Fantasy over Warcraft. So, I did wrap up the main story for both Bard and Samurai up to the point of Heavensward. I've made more progression since then, but I will say that the stories are way more in depth. They actually feel like an RPG, and one of the biggest complaints I had about A Realm Reborn was that the progression of the story was a bit wonky and a bit slow, and it wasn't well paced. Heavensward fixed that, and it is getting better and better with every quest and every patch. I had no problem going through all of Heavensward. Even the post-content stuff that slowed down the leveling, it still felt good because you were progressing with better gear that sets you up for success in the start of Stormblood. And Stormblood, different video, but it just keeps getting better with Stormblood. It shocked me, but I'm glad for it. Um, so, uh, the the second pain point for Warcraft that Final Fantasy just knocks out of the park is how it treats flying. Now, in A Realm Reborn, you finish the game, you go through some quests, it unlocks flying automatically as part of the main story quest, so long as you completed certain or side quests early on. And the quest name, I think they could have done a better quest name because it's called My Little Chocobo. God, they could easily have called that something better, but you complete that side quest, or you get your Chocobo license, and bam, you're off to the races with your mounts. That's all you got to do. Or it's not buying or all new mounts. They actually give you a mount that can fly later. You just have to complete the quest, and it's not a difficult quest to complete. You just got to go out and do it. But past A Realm Reborn, or within Heavensward and so far in Stormblood as well, I don't think they changed in Shadowbringers, but I will find out soon. But instead of waiting to the end of the expansion and getting a part as a quest, you actually explore the zones and you pick up, or basically go to certain areas and pick up what they call Aetherwind nodes, which are just areas where you learn about how the winds or flow in an area. You learn the wind patterns, and some side quests or give you those nodes as well, which I think is a far better system than what Warcraft are done, or since Warlords of Draenor is. How Warcraft did it by comparison is you have to do an insanely long list of achievements to unlock it, and some of it was reputation based, so you were spending weeks when you're already at max level grinding to unlock those. Now granted, it's account wide, but that is kind of why it's a pain point for me, is that it shouldn't be or that bad in the first place. And why I think Final Fantasy is superior is that because it's so alt friendly, you don't have to change jobs, and once you unlock flying, you can fly with a level 15 character so long as you can hop on your mount. So if you got a low level or job class like a level 1 Arcanist, you can fly as a level 1 Arcanist provided you have completed that or requirement to fly in that area. Now, granted, why you would take a level 1 Arcanist to someplace like Heavensward, I don't know. But some people are crazy. But because of that alt-friendliness, once you unlock flying, it's one and done, and it accomplishes the same goal. I believe it was Ian Acostas. Don't quote me on that. I'm not going to look that far back. But I do remember them talking about, in several interviews, or the WoW developers, how they didn't want flying in Warlords of Draenor because they wanted you to experience the world in a particular way. And they didn't want flying at all. They only put flying in much later, at a lot of player or rejection of some of the stuff that was going on, or so that they could satisfy the player base somewhat at the time. And it was a quote, what was the word they used? A compromise of how players wanted it versus what they wanted. In my opinion, it was not a good compromise. It didn't feel good. Or Legion, Battle for Azeroth, kept it. Shadowlands has made a little bit more friendly a version of that, but it's still gated. It's not something you can potentially get day one if you played your cards right. So that's what I don't like about that system. Final Fantasy accomplishes the same goal, but in a much more digestible, meaningful way that feels like you've actually done something, because it encourages world exploration while giving you something to gain from exploring the world besides just completing quests. So massive improvement there for flying. Definitely one for Final Fantasy. And we talked about jobs. That is something that WoW really needs. So if a change is made for, say, or a shaman, you don't like it, you want to become a druid because that's or one they've improved, you just change out your equipment or go pick it up, and you're off to the races without losing progress you made on hunters should it become viable again later on, as an example. And one thing that I didn't get introduced into Heavensward because I've just joined a free company, which is the equivalent of a guild in Warcraft. It's simply that or the free companies don't feel icky, don't feel forced. They still have that sense of community, and they still make gameplay fun because they're going to help you out with content. I haven't hit in-game content close at all, but it feels like that a free company would be more willing to help out, and they're more friendly. They actually talk about stuff, and you got to do a dungeon, or there's not a lot of pushback. Unlike my guild experience in Warcraft, where I say, "Hey, I need to do this dungeon. Can anyone help me out?" and I would get crickets. And even when I was in a company run by my company, but a guild with friends that I was assisting in running, and I say assisting because I work generally a 12-hour day. I only got a couple hours at night to run stuff, and this person would need help with, say, a mythic dungeon. I would help them out, but when I reach out and say, "Hey, I need to run this, this, and this," or I would get crickets. And it's not because my friends weren't helping out, because they were doing things that they needed to do. Because they have a different schedule than I do. I'm not faulting them for it, but there were other people that were online doing nothing. So, in the last guild last 3 guilds that I was in, there was so much drama. I just didn't feel welcome at all in those guilds. And the last one, or eventually, or kicked one of my good friends, and I just said, enough's enough. I'm not putting up with this. If you're gonna kick my friend for nothing, which is basically what it was, or I'm not gonna stick around. I mean, because my friend's more important to me than the guild. Because my friend's been there with me from the start of my playing Warcraft, so I'm gonna go with my friend. Free company feels a lot more friendly and a lot more accepting and a lot more interactive. I wish I was more active in the Discord, but I've only got a few hours in the day generally, and I do content on the side, so I don't have a ton of time there. But housing, I'd never experienced the housing because there was a lot of housing that's been bought up. I wanted to buy a player house, or initially, but I didn't have the guild. Now that I have the guild, there's no availability. So hopefully I get to buy one soon, but I did get to see what player housing looked and felt like because the free company that invited me in has a company house. And this is something that could have easily been incorporated in vanilla Warcraft, and it should have been. They had a perfect way to slipstream it in Warlords of Draenor with the garrison system, but they didn't. They made a butchered, half-baked version of it that just did not work. And the mini games are just mini games. They're there to kind of just have fun, maybe make a couple of gil. They're there to have fun in Final Fantasy. In Warcraft, they tried to make the minigame system a progression system, and I'm sorry, it does not work. It doesn't feel good. It's not fun. The mission table is garbage. They need to get it out of Warcraft. It is pointless, and they are wasting too much time on it. Final Fantasies, they got it right. They've got the system in place, basically put it on autopilot and let it do its thing. They're just making newer versions of it with newer versions of the game. That's what I like about the free company housing or in the mini games. Then, in the end of the story, I won't say exactly what happens, but I will say when you are going 1v1 with a huge dragon, it can be pretty intimidating, but they make that story, or when it gets to that point in that ultimate showdown, it pays off big time in how they tell that story, what happens, and it's a brilliant telling of the story of excising corruption and restoring faith in the people. So I will leave that story there. And now we're going to talk about 9.1, or in exclusivity. This, well, this is the thing I got out of the patch notes, and um, it feels like Warcraft has just put themselves in a systems hell. Like, they keep coming up with new systems every single time, or for new gems, new gear, or that is built on a new type of, or of a mechanic system. And I just kind of got to look at it, and or it's like they're reinventing Legion all over again and failing again. They're basically at Legion 3.0 at this point, and it's not working. Well, or I would say probably Legion 4 now, because one of the Battle for Azeroth patches was technically 3.0. But they started with Azerite gear, or, well, let's go back to Legion. They had the legendary weapons where you could customize them, unlock things, put different traits in them. They worked great. It was a fluke because it was a bad system, but it worked with the story and the setting. It worked with how players needed to progress. It was a good idea because you were the head of your order hall. You actually had a functional place in the game. You felt like a center of the story. Like, you weren't a side character. And the legendary weapon made you feel pretty badass. And you could make it stronger. That was the point of that system, and it worked. World quests were new at that point, and they worked because you weren't doing the same ones every single day. There was at least changing on between set. It was a good system that should not have worked, but it did, and it was a good story. And I think that's what made the biggest difference. They fit the story, they fit or the overall arc of the game. So why did it work in Legion and not in Battle for Azeroth? Battle for Azeroth took the same concepts but did not improve on them. They actually made them functionally worse because now you added another layer on top of that layer. Because now you, or instead of the legendary weapon, you got a neck piece. Why the choice of neck piece? I don't know. But I'll make sure my mic wasn't muted. I'm sorry. I have a habit of doing that. But then you take that neck piece with all these different traits that you can use, and it levels up. You can put certain traits in it, and then you get Azerite armor that links to that you can equip over a certain level. If your neck piece is under a certain level, you couldn't equip the new shoulders you just got because your neck wasn't strong enough. And then you had to hope you got the right traits on that shoulder piece for it to be any good for your class and your spec. Like, why? And then or with that system, or your end gear reward, say you completed so many mythics for a week, they called it the Chest of Sadness because there was so much RNG involved. You could get a freaking awesome, or awesome chest piece. Doesn't have the right stats, doesn't have the right traits. It's useless. So why they keep repeating that system, I don't know. So, and then here comes, the last patch of Battle for Azeroth, the Visions of N'Zoth. They add corruption into it, which is a great idea, and it was something different, so it worked for a particular patch, and I will give them that. But overall, it was pretty much the same concepts. You had to get the right traits for the right piece of gear with the right corruption, and it was all RNG based. So it was basically more the same, but at least there was a negative consequence that you had to balance out. So it made it interesting from the sense that it was something new and something different. So I kind of liked it for that reason. But even then, I could see it was not a good idea for a long-term gear system because it just did not work. Then, here comes Shadowlands. Shadowlands, still RNG focused, still had to hope for the right stuff to drop at the end of the week. It was not deterministic. PvP ended up being the system that they needed for PvE. it ended up being the right way to gear because there was a clear progression system, and even if you didn't get a piece of gear you wanted at the end of the week for completing so many PvP matches, you could still get currency to upgrade your current gear. So it got it right. So why do they not do this for PvE gear? Well, they finally did, but they did not accomplish the goal. They missed the mark by a mile because you still have to get the right piece of gear drop, you still have to get the right stats on that piece of gear, and now with the Shards of Domination gear, like, you have to get the right shards to go in that gear. Now, granted, once you get the shard, you can upgrade it, but you still have to get it in the first place, and there's no real deterministic way to get it. It's RNG drops. And I look at this and I'm kind of wondering, like, what are y'all doing? Like, why? And then, let's not even get into chore gas, which, granted, from what I've heard, chore gas is a little bit better, but it's still a core problem that it is central to progression, and what they did with it, or basically tying it to your legendary construction, like okay, so you made it the worst version possible before launch, after players already say, hey, this is good, you change it literally in the last minute right before launch, and make it a infinitely worse version that people do not really want to do, that being 6 layers, no real payoff, and the Soul Ash is almost worthless because now you spent an entire 8-month-long patch, which was about 3 months too long, or forging these legendaries, upgrading them, and then here comes patch 9.1. You have to do it all over again to reforge that legendary, or it fits into a slot that is not covered by domination gear. Like, that is a blatant disrespect for player time. I don't want nothing to do with that. So, and then flying. Why was it even gated behind week 2 of this patch? It should have had day 1 availability, say, here's the requirements for flying, accomplish this requirement, you can fly. Whether it takes 1 day or 1 month, it's up to you, this is what you have to do. That would have been fine. I would have been perfectly okay with that. But they didn't. You have to wait 2 weeks to even get close to that. Instead of it just being day 1, you gotta do this, and this, and you can fly. Now, part of that might take 2 weeks based on their progression system. I kind of understand that. I just don't like it. And so I've had enough of flying being tied to any sort of achievement. You know, the story, yeah, I think it'd be fine in a novel, but as a game, I think they are just kind of recycling what's safe, what they think is good, and I think they're focusing on the wrong characters. Now, they got interesting elements that I think would make a fine novel, like Sylvanas' soul being shattered by Frostborn, which they alluded to with Uther the Lightbringer, where part of him is in the Shadowlands as a Kyrian. Where the other part, where is he? Is he still within the Shards of Frostmourne? Did he just go into the ether? Is he in the Maw? Or is he back on Azeroth? We don't know, but part of him is definitely missing. We know that for a fact. We saw that in the cinematics. And the Uther we meet in Shadowlands, he's definitely missing that classic patience we knew him for. So, and the adventure table, but again, we talked about this earlier, it just needs to go. It has no functional bearing on the game. It's not a fun side game. If you want to keep it, fine, but make it a mobile app tied to the game, kind of like you did with the WoW Armory. That way, if someone genuinely does like it, it's something they can do while they're out and about. It gives them a little bit of something to do while they're doing something else. It does not need to be in the actual game, because it is pointless. And finally, items and rewards with the Great Vault. This has been a very, very big pain point for me since Shadowlands launched, and I feel like they have not learned a thing. But the Great Vault was supposed to be for items and stuff at the end of a pretty hard Mythic week. But now, if you don't like any items, hey, here, have more Anima, Stygia, or Soul Ash. Well, Anima needs to go. Sorry, but the drought's over. In the currency, being put all the rewards that were tied to Anima to something else, or make Anima super easy to get resource, where you can just unlock the stuff and be done with it. Like, get rid of it. But we're putting more Anima, more Stygia, and more Soul Ash as a vault reward does not really fix the problem of the vault. It just makes it worse, in my opinion. So and the thing I'm kind of getting here is, and this kind of ties all of it together, Warcraft is simply, or they probably do care. The developers that are working on this stuff do care. They want their stuff to work as intended. But that's where the disconnect, I think, is happening. You got your developers down here on the base floor. You got your mid-level management up here that's trying to figure out how to get this stuff done and how to plan it. And then you got your upper-level management up here that just only sees dollar signs, money, and metrics. That is what most all this seems like, is that you're just trying to get people to play the game and pay them monthly sub fees and use that in-game store. It feels very transparent to me, and that is why I don't enjoy retail WoW. I just don't. Final Fantasy, it feels like the developers actually care about the community feedback, where they want you to spend time in game, but they want you to actually enjoy your experience in the game. Not just give them money for nothing. That is what the biggest difference is. Final Fantasy feels like a genuine experience, a place you would want to go at the end of the day after a hard day's work. Say, hey, I want to go to Costa del Sol and just chill out. Well, I would definitely go to Costa del Sol. It is a fun-looking place to be. Plenty of beach, plenty of interesting characters, you name it. Warcraft? Why would I want to go to Shadowlands? A place of death. I mean, what is there for me? I don't really want to go there at the end of the day. I mean, there's not any real adventuring or anything that seems that super fun to me. It seems like it's grindy. Why would I want to spend there after hours? And I could miss a day in Final Fantasy and not feel behind. In Warcraft, God forbid you miss doing a weekly, you're done. You're just out of the running. You got to play some serious catch up at that point. That is what I feel is the difference here. Final Fantasy makes it fun. They embrace the idea that they are only going to be able to produce so much content, and it's only going to last for so long. It's like, okay, once you're done with the content, take a break, have fun, play other games. We will see you back next patch. And they don't freaking make it so time gated that you have to play a certain number of weeks just to get all that game story. Warcraft? But no, we got 3 weeks worth of content here. Let's go ahead and extend it over 9. Well, that'll be fine. But I'm at this point, I've seen the release schedule. Some of the stuff being released in the later weeks should have been available day one without a question, like Comp Stomp. Love Comp Stomp. It is fun to do. Easy way to get PvP marks for the non-PvP player. Or if you just need a few as a PvP player, but don't want to sit there and go for like a half hour long battleground, you just want to get it done and over with to upgrade your piece of gear so you can get to your next battleground. Good. Great system. It's fun. That's why I need to be there day one, not week 7, 8, or 9. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will see you all next video.